Let me take it to a quick journey to Lynch-Bages. North of Bordeaux, on the left bank of the Gironde River, half a mile from the town of Pauillac, is the small village of Bages, surrounded by the vines of Lynch-Bages. Lynch-Bages is a wine estate of about 250 acres, planted with 75% Cabernet Sauvignon, 15% Merlot, 10% Cabernet Franc, 2% Petit Verdot, which makes 102%. That's our kind of arithmetics, you know. It also produces a small quantity of white wine from Sauvignon and Semillon grapes. It has a long history. Its name comes from a Mr. John Lynch, who came from Ireland in 1691 after the Battle of Le Boyne, which I'm sure you are very familiar with. And John Lynch established his trade in Bordeaux. His grandson eventually became mayor of the city in the beginning of the 19th century. Our family has nothing to do with Ireland whatsoever. My great-grandfather came from the Pyrenees Mountains in the end of the 19th century to work in the vineyards. My grandfather Jean-Charles, with a nice moustache, who had started his career as a baker in Pauillac, purchased Lynch-Bages in the 1930s when the industry went through very difficult times. My father, André, was the second Cazes generation at Lynch-Bages, and I've been the lucky third since the mid-1970s. My son, Jean-Charles, is now the fourth generation on the property. He now runs Lynch-Bages, rather competently, I must say. He is helped and watched by his three sisters, while the fifth generation, mostly girls, as you can tell on this picture, is preparing to take over in the distant future. Lynch-Bages is our home. It is not a grandiose chateau, but a nice house, adjacent to an excellent technical facility that has known many changes through the centuries. The winery has kept its spectacular 19th century fermentation room that we now use only for art exhibitions. The winemaking technology of today is quite state-of-the-art. And of course, we insist on using the traditional methods of aging our wines in barrels. Wine at Lynch-Bages is not only a matter of equipment and technology. People is the name of the game. Our team is very solid, led by Nicolas, our head technician, and Malou, our sales director. They can count on experienced professionals, Frank, the vineyard manager, Guy, the enologist, and a number of enthusiastic individuals who work in the vineyard, the fermentation rooms, or the barrel cellars. Now, let us board the great wine time machine, the only time machine that really works, as you know. Let's go back a few years and talk about the 2000 vintage that you have in your glass. The key dates of the growing season were normal. They laid the ground for a good vintage. On the October 25th, we gathered our pickers. They worked under excellent weather conditions. The first 3 days, we picked the Merlot grapes. Then we stopped for 4 days in order to wait for the perfect ripening of the Cabernet Sauvignon, and we resumed picking on October 3rd. Our small volume of Petit Verdot was picked on the 8th. All our grapes were safely loaded in the fermenting vats by October 10th. These are the dates of the 2000 harvest. Textbook dates in Bordeaux. At this most important time, the cooks are the most important members of the crew. They have to feed several hundred people and keep them happy. In their kitchen, early in the morning, I had a daily meeting with Daniel, our head winemaker at the time. That are wonderful memories for me. The grapes look beautiful. The lab delivered textbook analysis. Our cellar master, Guy, he has now retired, took very good care of the harvest. My father came to check if everything was in place, and of course, he paid a visit to the cooks. At the end, the pickers had a big party, enjoyed the traditional leg of lamb, and went home. We were then left with dozen slots of wines and we went to work on the selection and the final blend, the assemblage, as we call it. Daniel and Guy are very competent professionals. The quality of the vintage made it an easy task, and I believe we did a good job. Then the wine was put in barrels, where it stayed for about 15 months, going through the traditional racking process that helps clarify and soften the wine. We crafted 2 different wines for our first and second labels. The blend that was to become 2000 Lynch-Bages was made of 71% Cabernet Sauvignon, 16% Merlot, 11% Cabernet Franc, 2% Petit Verdot. 70% of the wine was aged in new oak and 30% in 1-year-old barrels. In 2002, the wine was bottled. We started to ship in the fall. The wine found its way to private cellars, wine stores. Some bottles even became prizes offered to some Basque high-allied champion. Others fell in the hands of competent sommeliers. Well, that is the end of the story of the 2000 vintage, for the time being at least. To wrap it up, I just want to say I hope you will come soon to our beautiful Médoc region and visit us in Pauillac. This is the Pauillac lamb, very famous, excellent with red wine. We will do our best to prepare your visit and give you an occasion to open a good bottle of Lynch-Bages. Decant it and drink it with good food and good friends, as it should always be when fine wine is on the agenda. Thank you very much.
So,
it worked.
This is the oldest wine that we've had today so far. 2000 is the oldest vintage, 15 years old now. How would you say this is in its evolution?
The evolution, it's 14 years old today. The wine starts showing really at its best, but you know, a wine goes through different stages. It can be drunk very young, it can be drunk very old. It depends how you drink it. Depends the food you have with it. And 2000 is a very full-bodied vintage. At the moment, it has to be enjoyed with hearty foods, with meats, with something that has lots of flavor. It's going to balance the taste of the food very nicely. I think this wine will be around for, I would say, another 50 years. I won't be around. Most of you won't either. When you drink wine, you drink also history. And when you open a bottle of wine, this is something I like to say, it's like Aladdin's lamp. You know, you pull the cork and the genie of the wine comes out of the bottle. And with carrying with it the history of the place where it was grown, the people who made it, and the time. Again, the time machine. Wine is a time machine.
Well, thank you for introducing us to the genie of Lynch-Bages.
Anyway,
Jean-Michel Cazes.
Thank you very much.